I miss being there. If it were not for COVID, I would still be serving in Macon County. I had no intention of leaving Greater Friendship. I had no intention of leaving Tuskegee. I was going to find a way to make it work. And it, I just could not physically do it because I've lost some
Okay.
weight. I'm rested. And I think that's it.
So, whatever you're doing is working for you. So you look really relaxed and at peace.
Well, I am still not out of the woods, um, but figuring it out. Definitely figuring it out.
I hope that that part of your journey is stress-free or stress manageable.
It's definitely stress manageable. I think the issue is just dealing with the unknowns. Um, and right now, I think I'm starting to wrap my mind around the brain fog and the mental fatigue, and I'm able to manage it a little bit better. But what's happening physically as a result of COVID is the big challenge. Um, they were both a challenge together, but I didn't realize the physical problem until maybe 2 months ago. It didn't click. It didn't make sense to me. I, of course, moved here to Birmingham after my mother passed with COVID. So I've been in Birmingham now since April 1st of 2021. And I think it was the very next year, 2022, that I contracted COVID while teaching a class for our denomination. We were having the Auburn District Congress of Christian Education. I came down, I taught my class, and there was a person in the class who I found out the next day didn't show up for the second day of class because she tested positive for COVID. And by the time I got back home on Saturday, I was really, really sick and went and found out that yes, I tested positive for COVID, quarantined here at home, and quarantine as in like my wife closed me in the bedroom and it's almost like, hey, I'm gonna slide you some food in here for you to eat. And I had a little basket of goodies that I could have, and probably halfway through I lost taste and smell, but then I got that back. Um, but after COVID was over, I was exhausted. I was constantly exhausted, and I started to have some mental malaise. I started that brain fog people were talking about. And literally, if I could describe it, it's like I know that my mind can do a thing, but my mind is not able to do it right now, or my mind is too tired to do it right now. That's what the brain fog is when you start forgetting things, people's names, when you start having difficulty recalling times and places, when you're not conscious of some things because you're just not paying attention. You don't have the mental alacrity to do that. And so the brain fog was the first challenge because writing sermons and doing things with the Macon County Community Partners Task Force required a lot of mental work, and it became more and more difficult. And so I began to work through that. Then, as Greater Friendship began to transition back to in-person worship, started making trips to Tuskegee on a weekly basis, and that became really challenging. Going back and forth, it turned out that the mental drain and the physical drain, the physical fatigue was such that I would have to do completely nothing on Saturday so that I could drive down on Sunday, have worship, drive back, And then I would be no good on Monday, not able to do a thing. Couldn't, I mean, I was, sitting on my sofa, like just watching time go by because I just could not do anything physically or mentally. And that was a pattern. It was a constant pattern. And we reached a point where I determined that I needed to do something to try to get out ahead of this because I felt like, maybe I'm just tired because I've been working so much. Maybe I'm so tired because, all the meetings and all the things that are going on. So I asked, and Greater Friendship graciously accepted the opportunity for me to take a sabbatical. So I asked them to give me a month. And so I took the month of June um, of 2023. So the last Sunday in May throughout the entire month of June. When I came back in July, I felt better. I felt a lot better. I felt like I had some healing that happened. And then there's, getting back into going to the church every week because I was trying to see if I could handle it. Maybe after having a sabbatical, I could handle the drive. I could handle, all of the responsibilities that I had as a pastor. And as it turns out, by the time September rolled around, it it became too much. And I realized it wasn't sustainable for me to continue to come on the road because of what was happening to me physically and mentally and the strain that was left over from COVID. So that's when I asked Greater Friendship to give me the opportunity to look for a place to pastor here in Birmingham, that I would take 6 months and I would still pastor Greater Friendship, but I would be looking for a place to pastor. And then at the end of that 6 months, whether I found another place to pastor or not, I would step down. And so they agreed, and it ended the 6 months on March 31st. And on March 31st, which was Easter Sunday, that was my last Sunday at Greater Friendship, March 31st, 2024. And the Sunday before that, there was a farewell, and there were several people from the task force who were there, um, who wished me well, and it was wonderful to see them. But it's just been a process of healing. So when I came home and I was no longer on the road, I've just been sitting still and healing. Well, that's going well, except I realized the physical issue was bigger than I thought it was. And so another symptom that I have left over from COVID is what's called post exertion malaise, where when you exert yourself, you do too much, lift too much, your whole body just kind of wants to shut down. And you feel like, you just need to sit down, catch your breath. You feel like you've been working nonstop for 12 hours, even though all you did was go outside to mow your lawn. And so I have a riding lawnmower, but I still can't mow my lawn. My son has to come over and mow the lawn because it will it will wipe me out, the physical exertion. I would be no good after that. If I try to go out and help trim the hedges, I remember I was outside, he was mowing the lawn, I was trimming the hedges. I only have 4 bushes. And when I got done with those 4 bushes, actually before I got done, I felt like I was going to pass out. And I just had to sit on my front steps. And that's when it clicked. It's like, okay, I've noticed a pattern here. When I do something, no matter what it is, I am in a situation where my body wants to shut down. And that's when I went looking for information. I read an article. There was a firefighter who can no longer do his job after COVID because, picking up carrying equipment, things like that, he can't do that anymore because of this feeling every time he exerts himself. I'm experiencing the same thing. And so I have now since spoken to my doctor about it, and my doctor has brought me to see a specialist. So I'm seeing a cardiologist. And they did a stress test and it was non-conclusive. I have another more detailed test, the PET test, which um, Dr. Crystal over at Tuskegee University was teaching us about during the pandemic, that it was a very, very detailed um, test that they could see some of the leftover remnants of COVID, because my doctor believes there's a chance that COVID damaged my heart, because that has happened where the virus doesn't just set up in your lungs, the virus moves throughout your body. There are people who still have traces of COVID in different parts of their body, and they have places where COVID has done some damage. And so we're trying to figure out what happened and figure out what to do about it. So um, that is going to come up. And in the meantime, while we're trying to find the answers to that, I have found a balance. I have found a balance on how much work I can do. I have found a balance on how much physical activity I can do. But a lot of times it just springs up on me. So I'll give you an example that just the other day, I was bringing groceries in the house and I picked up a case of bottled water. And by the time I got from the car up my 4 steps and into the house, I felt like I was just not going to make it just from carrying one case of water. And I put the case of water down, and my wife, Melissa, looked at me and said, "You're not okay, are you?" I said, "No." She says, "Go sit down," because she knew it was happening again. She knew I was having that because I exerted myself by
Mhm.
picking up a case of water. I had to sit down. I had to sit down. I think I sat on the couch for a couple of hours just to regain my strength. Um, so it's a situation, and we're
Yeah.
still working through it. And I think that, the CDC has focused their attention on long COVID now, and they're trying to understand and categorize all the different types of issues people are having from long COVID and how to fix it. And so I wish them and the medical community success, because I know that there are millions of people out there who are dealing with things, and some of them dealing with things much worse than what I'm dealing with.
So you've had
Um,
COVID twice, am I correct?
once,
Once, and that was in 2022, and you're
one,
still dealing with the after effects of it.
yes.
Wow. And
and
are you
only and
also,
only recently
oh,
realized it was more than just the brain fog, that
yeah,
it was something else.
yeah.
And so I remember telling people when I got COVID, I felt like it aged me 10 years,
Mm.
but I couldn't put my finger on exactly what was happening. And so now I know more about what's happening, and hopefully we'll be able to uncover the source and figure out what to do. Do I take an antiviral? Do I have to have, um, you know, did it damage one of my valves and I have to have an ablation? We don't know yet. Um, but hopefully with the next more detailed test, they'll know something.
So are you pastoring a church now, or co-pastoring, or doing anything in the church community?
Yes. So I have been actively seeking a place to pastor. That I am currently serving as an interim pastor for a church whose pastor retired. And after the pastor retired at the end of June, I took over at the church at the beginning of July.
What's the name of
So
that church?
the church is Lily Baptist Church.
In Birmingham?
It's actually in Tarrant, which is one of the areas
Yeah.
just north of Birmingham, almost in Birmingham, but it's in Tarrant.
Mm.
And for me, living in Roebuck, it's only 7 minutes from my house, so
Oh, great.
it's very close. Um,
So your mom passed from COVID. I mean, COVID has been brutal to you. And now for COVID to visit your body, how do you reconcile that? Lost my mom to COVID and now it's slowing me down?
yeah, it's a rough circumstance, but I understand it's not as bad as it has been for many others. And I understand that I'm one of the individuals that ended up being displaced because of COVID. And what I mean by that is my original plan before the pandemic hit, I was on vacation and I was saying to myself, this is going to be a great year because maybe by December or January, I will be moving back to the Auburn, Tuskegee, or Montgomery area. My wife and I were contemplating preparing ourselves because our daughter was about to finish college. We were preparing ourselves to move closer, to get from Noonan, Georgia, to move closer. I could be more active in the church. But when everything happened concerning my mother in December of that year, all of my plans just unraveled. And I realized I needed to be here in Birmingham closer to family. And just this past year, in April, in April 2023, my grandmother passed. And so being here to support the family, they look to me for leadership was important. And so I feel like I made the right move to move here instead of moving,
Is
back
that
to
is
Auburn.
Birmingham your original home? Is that where you
Yes,
were born and raised?
born and raised here in Birmingham.
What community?
Ooh, pick one. Great story that. So, um, right as I was getting prepared to graduate college, I had found this wonderful young lady and decided she needed to be my wife, and I asked her to marry me. So we married right before I graduated. Well, we married in May. I had my first sermon in June, and we were living in Auburn at the time.
Did you go
And
to Auburn University?
yes, I
Okay.
have completed, my wife and I both graduated from Auburn. Um, and so we stayed in Auburn after graduation. We were attending her home church, which is in Valley, Alabama, Rehoboth Baptist Church. And while my wife was seeking her master's, she was doing some work with cooperative extension. They have the campus there at Auburn, and she was in the human human sciences department there in Spidle Hall. Well, she got to meet Dr. Carol Centrallo, and they got to talking one day and decided that their husbands needed to meet. And so we went with Carol Centrallo to Bible study one night. Her husband, Frank Centrallo, was the interim pastor at Greater Friendship at the time. And probably 6 months later, my family and we joined Greater Friendship. I served under Frank Centrallo. He did become the pastor. He was there for about 10 years. And when he stepped down, he recommended to the church that they would accept me as pastor. And eventually I became pastor of the church. So it was through a connection, a conversation between my wife and Dr. Centrallo that we ended up coming to Tuskegee.
Mm. What do you say to your friends here who miss you?
I miss them too. I do. I There's not a day that goes by I don't think about it. I mean, I can't help it. To be blatantly honest, this past January, I turned 50, and I've been the time I spent at Greater Friendship was 25 years, half my life. And so the relationships I've built, there are people who are there in town that are like family to me. And I talk to some of them on a regular basis. They may reach out to me or I may reach out to them. I've even reached out to a few people that we worked with on the task force and had conversations with them as well, just to check on everybody. I miss being there. If it were not for COVID, I would still be serving in Macon County. I had no intention of leaving Greater Friendship. I had no intention of leaving Tuskegee. I was going to find a way to make it work. And it, I just could not physically do it because of everything I was facing with COVID. And I felt that it was better for me to move out of the way and let the church identify someone who could really give them the care and attention they needed without the limitations that I have than for me to just stay there. Not yet. Wonderful thing though is when I asked them about me stepping down, I also recommended to them that they would allow one of our denominational church leaders who has done a lot of work in helping churches prepare to look for a pastor, that they would allow him to come in and consult with the church, and they agreed. So before I left in March, they had already posted the pastoral vacancy information on the church website. Um, I left them with a list of ministers that I know and trust that they could invite to come in and preach until such time as they go through their process. So they've been inviting those individuals in, and they've been preaching sometimes a month at a time. And I'm not sure where they are in their process right now, but I know that they're okay. I know because I talk to different members from time to time, and they're being prayerful about their process, and they're actively looking and seeking and searching for a new pastor. Really, it
So,
really is. And I have been back. I came down to perform a wedding, for example, and it was like the biggest family reunion ever. My face was just sore from all the smiling. Um, but to see everyone, to talk with everyone, to know that they're doing well. Um, I still kind of do a few pastor things. Like if I hear one of them's in the hospital, I'm giving them a call,
mm,
checking on them. Um, just because, like I said, they're like family. Greater Friendship is. There were children who were there when I got there that are now adults with their own children,
mhm.
and just been through so many life circumstances. So we do miss each other. We do.